Hello, I'm Agnes, and I just turned 85. When you reach this age, time stops being abstract. It becomes a tangible, finite thing you can measure in decades. People often ask me for my secret to a long life, but I think they should be asking about my regrets. Because if I could give back 60 of these years to fix one mistake, just one, it would be the mistake of living a lie. Not a malicious lie, but a slow, suffocating pretense. I pretended to be the woman everyone expected, and in doing so, I lost the woman I actually was. When I was young, the world was different. Expectations were rigid. I wasn't just encouraged to fit a mold, I was required to. I was supposed to marry well, support my husband, manage the household flawlessly, and prioritize social appearances above all else. My true self, the part of me that wanted to live in a studio apartment in Paris or study archaeology in Egypt, that self was considered frivolous, selfish, even dangerous. So I packed her away, like an old dress I knew I'd never wear again, and I started building the life of Mrs. Bertram Sinclair, the perfect society wife. I remember sitting at dinner parties, nodding along to conversations about finance and golf, desperately wanting to talk about the poems I secretly wrote in my journal, or the intense longing I felt to travel alone. Every day was a performance. I perfected the smile, the perfect cocktail party chatter, the graceful way to host without ever revealing a single unconventional thought. It wasn't just exhausting, it was corrosive. You spend so long acting that eventually you forget the script of your own soul. The fear wasn't failing society. The fear was that if I showed the real Agnes, everyone, especially my husband Bertram, would despise her. The pressure came from everywhere. My mother, bless her soul, instilled in me that security was the only true currency. She taught me that being admired was more important than being authentic. And Bertram? Well, he loved the idea of me. He loved the status I brought to his career. When I once hesitantly mentioned wanting to open a small pottery studio, my real passion, he laughed gently and said, "Darling, we don't need the money, and what would the folks at the club think?" That laugh, that simple dismissal, was the nail in the coffin of my dreams. I chose the safety of his approval over the messy freedom of my identity. There were moments, brief windows in my 30s and 40s, when the urge to escape was almost uncontrollable. I remember standing in front of the mirror one evening, completely ready for a gala, tears streaming down my face, smudging the expensive makeup. I didn't recognize the woman looking back. She was flawless, elegant, and empty. But the thought of disrupting everything, the children, the reputation, the financial stability, it paralyzed me. I retreated into the golden cage I had built. I convinced myself that this comfortable misery was just what adult life was supposed to feel like. The long-term consequence of living this lie isn't just missed opportunities. It's a profound disconnection from your loved ones. When you present a polished, inauthentic version of yourself, your children don't get to know you. They get to know the character you play. My daughter Ophelia grew up believing I was perfectly content baking and hosting, never knowing I secretly yearned to hike the Dolomites. How can I blame her now for not knowing how to connect with the real Agnes? She was only ever introduced to the facade. The turning point came when I was 78. My oldest friend, Beatrice, died suddenly. We were talking just weeks before, and she confessed that she wished she had never sold her sailboat. It was such a small thing, but it hit me like thunder. I suddenly realized that the clock wasn't just ticking, it was running out of steam. I thought, am I going to die the perfect Mrs. Sinclair, having never done one truly authentic, messy thing for myself? That night, I pulled out my old pottery supplies. They were dusty, but the clay still felt right in my hands. That was the first breath of freedom I'd taken in 60 years. When I first started to subtly change, wearing vibrant colors instead of taupe, signing up for an online history course, refusing to host the annual garden party, the backlash was swift, if unspoken. Ophelia asked if I was going through something. My grandchildren, used to the placid Agnes, were confused. It proves that the lie doesn't just bind you, it binds everyone around you to the expectation of your predictability. It takes courage, even at 80, to dismantle decades of carefully constructed falsehoods. But the momentary discomfort of confusing others is nothing compared to the decades-long agony of confusing yourself. I'm not trying to imply you should burn down your life. Responsibility is essential. But there is a colossal difference between necessary compromise and full self-abandonment. My greatest lie wasn't to Bertram or to society. It was the lie I told myself every morning in the mirror. This is fine. This is enough. It wasn't fine. It wasn't enough. When you constantly mute your true voice, you rob the world of your unique contribution. You might gain acceptance, but you lose your vibrancy. And I lost 60 years of vibrancy. If I can offer any wisdom to those of you watching, especially those in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, it's this. Stop waiting for permission. The time you think you have to figure things out, to wait until the kids are older, to wait until retirement, that time is imaginary. You think you'll regret the risk you take now? I promise you, you will regret the risks you fail to take far more profoundly. The fear of being disliked is a temporary discomfort. The agony of self-betrayal is a life sentence. I still live in the same house, but I've made small, glorious changes. There's now a loud, messy pottery wheel in the sunroom. My journals are filled with stories of imaginary archaeological digs. My children, finally, are starting to see small glimpses of the real Agnes, and they love her, flaws and all. The tragedy is that I wasted so much precious energy convincing the world I was fine, instead of simply being myself. But peace is attainable, even if it arrives on wrinkled feet. It is never too late to try to reclaim the person you locked away. So look closely at your life right now. Are you living your truth, or are you living the comfortable, accepted lie? Because that moment when you're 85 and you realize you spent 60 years carefully constructing a cage for yourself, that is a hollow, heart-stopping feeling. Don't wait for death to grant you permission to live. Live now. Be messy. Be loud. Be entirely, irrevocably, and beautifully you.